One of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they're moving to Yakima or anywhere within Yakima is assuming that if a house passes inspection and looks beautiful, it's probably a good buy. Honestly, some of the most expensive mistakes you'll ever make aren't the ones you notice during a walkthrough. They're the things hiding behind the walls, inside your insurance policy, or even in the neighborhood itself. I've lived here, I've sold hundreds of homes all over the Yakima Valley, and I've helped a lot of people relocate here. And there are a handful of homes that always make me slow down and ask more questions. Now, I really want to be clear before we jump into this video, this isn't a list of homes that I would never buy. Almost every house we're going to talk about today would absolutely be the right purchase for the right buyer. The difference here is understanding what you're getting before you own it. So let's start with the kind of house that usually gets everyone's attention, and that is the house that looks too good to be true. If I see a beautifully updated 2,000 square foot home listed for significantly under market value, I'm immediately asking myself why. Not because there's always something wrong. Sometimes people do price aggressively in order to get multiple offers, but around here, that's usually a home that deserves a much closer look. Fresh paint is cheap. New flooring is relatively inexpensive, and quartz countertops photograph beautifully. None of those things tell me whether the plumbing was updated, whether the electrical was updated, or whether permits were pulled for any of the work completed at the property. It doesn't tell me whether any work that was done behind the walls was done correctly. And one of the bigger mistakes I see buyers make is assuming because something looks new, everything must be new. That's simply not true. One of my favorite inspectors that I work with says that houses don't lie forever. If shortcuts were taken, they almost always show themselves eventually. That doesn't mean not to buy renovated homes or even ones that have only had cosmetic renovation. It just means that you need to ask more questions. Who completed the work? Were permits required to be pulled? When was the work completed? And if permits were required to be pulled, were they? What systems were actually updated rather than just covered up? Now, those questions matter a lot more than the paint color. But sometimes the hidden expense isn't the renovation at all. Sometimes it's in your insurance company's policy. So the next type of house is the house that your insurance company doesn't like. Now, this is probably the topic I wish more realtors would talk about and get educated on, and that is the cost of the policy over time with things like the fire hazard increasing and floodplain insurance. Fire hazard increases have changed here dramatically over the last few years, and the homes that are in fire hazard locations may not be intuitive to a lot of realtors. I've seen a lot of people in full-on neighborhoods being denied insurance because of their location, depending on the carrier. And it could also greatly increase the insurance cost of the home. So you, as the buyer, need to understand the risk level of your home, what the insurance company is going to require for payments for that, and you need to make an informed decision. Now, some of these things are ones that we as realtors find a little bit silly because they're kind of obviously not in a fire hazard area and the carrier just doesn't understand our area very well. But you need to get educated on that. You need to understand the insurance costs. You need to work with them early in the process so you're not surprised by that cost later. Get the quotes for your insurance within your insurance contingency period when you go under contract. And even if your insurance company loves the house, that doesn't mean that you'll love living in it. And that type of house is the house that doesn't fit how Yakima lives. Now, this one especially applies if you're moving from Western Washington over into Central or Eastern Washington. Yakima is not Seattle. It is not the I-5 corridor. Our summers are hot, really hot, scalding. It is not unusual here to see multiple weeks over 100 degrees. So I get a little nervous when I walk into homes that were clearly designed without Yakima's climate in mind. Sometimes it's an older home with no air conditioning at all because it wasn't as necessary back when that home was built and maybe nobody's upgraded it. Sometimes it's a newer home built by a builder from the West Side that technically maybe has air conditioning, but it wasn't designed for this climate. So it could be a larger 2-story home with only one HVAC zone. The upstairs struggles to keep cool all summer long while downstairs freezes. Or maybe the unit is undersized for the amount of glass or square footage. On paper, the home has air conditioning, but in reality, you're uncomfortable, exceedingly uncomfortable for 3 months out of the year. And the same goes for homes that maximize indoor square footage at the expense of outside space. A lot of relocation buyers here get excited because they can all of a sudden afford a much bigger house than they could on the west side. And I completely understand why. But Yakima is a place where people actually use their yards. They use the indoor outdoor living opportunities. They have barbecues, they have gardens, they have dogs, kids, whatever it is, even just sitting outside after the evening temperature drops. A giant house squeezed onto the tiniest lot in the subdivision might look like a bargain, but it doesn't always fit the lifestyle that draws people here in the first place. And it can be a struggle for resale later. Speaking of neighborhoods, let's talk about one that surprises people. And it's the neighborhood that seems like the best deal. Sometimes the issue is not the house. It's the timing of purchasing the house. Buying early in a new construction development can be one of the smartest financial moves you can make. With a reputable builder, as the neighborhood fills in, your home often appreciates forcefully alongside the builder's increasing prices. But there's another side to that equation. If you think there's a good chance that you're going to sell again in just a couple of years, you may end up competing directly with that builder, and that is a very tough fight. The builder can offer warranties, they can offer incentives, they can offer closing cost assistance, and they're offering brand new finishes, often where the buyer can even pick their colors and their design. So if you're planning or thinking you might be moving again quickly, I want you thinking about that and planning for it before you buy. Because if you buy in a new construction community and you're planning to sell soon, you might be setting yourself up for failure. Now, here's the category that probably costs buyers the most money, and that house is the fast flip. Now, I want you to don't hear what I'm not saying. I am not anti-flip. Some of the best homes that I've sold, or even when I bought, were ones that were quickly renovated and beautifully done and well done. But I am cautious about fast flips. If someone owned the home for only a month or two before putting it back on the market, I want to understand exactly what happened. Did they truly renovate the important systems, or did they simply make sure it photographs well? This is where having a really good home inspector matters. And it is why I'm such a big believer in following the inspector's recommendations for additional evaluations. But an inspector can't see behind walls. But if they recommend bringing in a roofer to check it out, bring in a roofer. If they recommend an electrician, bring in an electrician. This is not creating problems in your transaction. This is reducing surprises. So on our first home we bought in North Dakota, it was a flip. Most of it was done well. It was all done with the cheapest finishes, I will say. But one of the things that was done totally incorrectly is when the AC unit was installed, they did not open the Freon valve. And so the AC ran for the first 3 years. And we were like, gosh, why isn't it running very effectively? But we were getting some, because the fan was running, so we were getting some relief. I found out that a $4,000 AC unit was completely shot because it was installed incorrectly. So I just want you to be aware that sometimes these fast flip situations can be bad. Now, there's one final category I want every, especially relocation buyer, to think about. And that is the house that comes with a surprise renovation. Sometimes the inspection looks good, the home functions well, and you're happy. Then underwriting for your insurance comes back and they have a list of required repairs before they'll insure your home. Some things we've already talked about here: a roof, a panel, tree trimming, handrails. I've even seen deck repairs. These were not things that you planned to do immediately. They might have been on your list, but they weren't an immediate concern for you based on the inspection report. Because oftentimes, depending on the severity, they may not be an immediate safety concern. But this is why I encourage my buyers start talking with insurance companies as early as possible once we're under contract. I'd much rather discover those requirements while we still have room to negotiate with the seller than after closing when the bill belongs entirely to you. So after all that, you may have noticed something. I never actually told you not to buy any of these homes. That's because I don't believe that there are many houses that should automatically be crossed off your list. I believe that there are houses that deserve better questions, and there are homes that make sense if they're priced appropriately and you understand the trade-offs. And there are homes that look like bargains until you realize what they're going to cost you over the next 5 or 10 years. Now, my job isn't to convince you to buy or not buy a particular house. My job is to make sure you know exactly what you're buying before you make one of the biggest financial decisions of your life. And if you're thinking about moving to Yakima and you want someone who's going to point out the things that don't show up in the listing photos, I'd really love to help. You can reach out anytime. My email's listed below. And if you found this video helpful, I've got another one right here about what it's actually like living in Yakima, so you can keep doing your homework before you make the move. I'm Corie Berg, local Yakima realtor, and I'll see you in the next one.